It's Ash from Super Videos, back for another video for Season 11 of The Walking Dead. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the series finale of The Walking Dead and some news that there has been some changes to the final scene of the final episode of the series. So we're going to take a look at the news and also the repercussions of that news and how much of the series finale could have been impacted by this change. Whether this is just a after credit scene that they might have added on, or whether it's an actual change to the scene at the very end of the episode itself. So stay tuned, we'll be right back to break it down. Alright, as always, before we dive into it, smash the like button, subscribe to join our community, and press the bell to be notified when I upload on the channel. Now, this is not recent news. This has been going around for a little bit now, but I decided to hold up until now before the series finale because obviously that would make sense because it's right before the episode and we have more context into what's actually happening and we're not just making wild theories and wild predictions. Now, obviously, if you haven't watched the previous episode, Season 11, Episode 23, you probably don't want to watch this because I will talk a little bit about some stuff from the previous episode, so 11:23, which spoil it for you if you haven't watched the episode yet. So with that said, let's get into it. Now, I have two articles or pieces of articles that were posted a while back, and these are basically coming from an interview done with Angela Kang, the showrunner for Season 11. I know that Scott M. Gimple, the chief content creator of the series, also said similar stuff, but I decided to just talk about these two pieces because most of these are pretty related and pretty much the same because they are not going to give away too much. But the first piece of what I have reads, Walking Dead showrunner Angela Kang has stated that the show's intended ending has been changed prior to the series finale. And then there's another part of that article that reads, during an interview with Radio Times, Walking Dead showrunner Angela Kang revealed the final scene of the show has been changed ahead of the series finale. Kang was adamant not to spoil anything for excited viewers, wanting them to see the finished product for themselves. Check out what Kang said below. I will say without spoiling that our intended final scene is not the final scene anymore. I won't go into that now, so early in the process, but sometimes even after you've shot things, it changes in the post-production process. It's a living work as we go. I don't even know if I should say that much. Let's just say things changed. So two big pieces of information here. One is that she was talking about it being early in the process. That was because this was like maybe a month ago, maybe more. So the news that the ending changed came out a while back, which means that whatever they reshot, if any, was done in the last few weeks. So that's definitely important. The other important thing to note here is that they only talk about the final scene, not the final 15 minutes, not the final half hour, just the final scene, which means that story-wise, it's probably gonna be the exact same. Nothing is gonna change as far as the story. What could change is how the series wraps. So the final scene, as they said. And that, I think, is probably something to do with a scene that's not a part of the main story. And what I mean by that is, if we go to the comics, of course there was a time jump. And in that time jump, we saw something that wasn't necessarily directly connected to the story that we saw before the time jump, but it involved the same characters and the same overall story. So I think that it's going to be a similar sort of thing. I feel like we are most definitely going to see some sort of a time jump. And when they talk about the final scene, they're really talking about the scene in the time jump. I could be wrong, but that's just how I read it. And also, the other important thing to note here is that she's talking about things changing in post-production and things like that, which means that it's extremely unlikely that they actually reshot a lot of stuff. They probably shot multiple alternate scenes or alternate endings or things that they didn't know exactly which one to choose to be the final scene, and they just changed it. Who knows? It might even be swapping of one of the scenes that they put earlier to the scene that they actually had for the final scene. You know what I mean? So this doesn't necessarily mean that a lot is changing. It just means that they changed the very final scene which ends the series. So we can't really go off of this and make a lot of predictions just based on this. However, I do want to say one thing. It obviously takes time and money to do this. So this must have been a significant change, and I'll explain what I mean by significant, but it had to have been a significant change for them to feel like it's worth it to go back and change things up, whether it's shooting things again, which is less likely, like I said, or change the ordering of things, or just things in post-production, whatever that may be. Now, when I say significant, I don't mean significant in terms of the overall story. I mean significant in terms of what it leaves you with, the impact, the end impact of the series. You know what I mean? Now, if I were to make a prediction about what that might be, I feel like that change might have something to do with a scene revolving around Rick Grimes. Now, the reason why I say that is because we know that there's been rumors, a lot of rumors, that he's gonna make a cameo in the final episode of the series, and that makes a lot of sense. Like, it would be a missed opportunity and just very disappointing and confusing if they don't bring Rick back in the final episode of the series, right? So I feel like this has to involve Rick in some way. Now you may ask, why now? Why didn't they just do it when they were filming the final episode? Well, I think that filming schedule has a lot to do with it. I think maybe at the time they were filming the final episode, Andrew Lincoln, who plays Rick, wasn't available, so they had to kind of not rely on him being there for filming the final episode. But then when he had time later, he might have gone back and filmed some stuff for the final episode. Now, it might not necessarily be a huge scene, but it could be. And the reason why I say that is because maybe the final scene is just a montage of best Rick Grimes moments or something. And at the very end, we do see Rick wherever he is right now in the current storyline. Whether that's the CRM, whether that's in another place, and we'll see a glimpse of what he's up to end things. And I feel like here is where they could have things connect back to what we just saw in the recent episode, 1123. Obviously, we did see Judith getting shot. Spoiler alert, obviously, but I did put a spoiler warning at the beginning, so it's not much of a spoiler warning anymore. But we did see Judith get shot. She didn't die, not yet at least. I don't think she'll die, but anyway, we did see her getting shot. So maybe that final scene has to do with some sort of a mini reunion between Judith and Rick. Maybe Judith and Michonne. Maybe the three of them. And here is where I think this could also be a variation of what happened in the comics. Because in the comics, we did see Carl reading the story of his father, Rick Grimes, to his daughter. So what if they changed that up, and instead of having Carl, a much older Carl, telling that story to his daughter, it'll be maybe Judith telling that story to RJ or someone else. RJ would make a lot more sense. And what if at the end of that scene, which is the story of Rick Grimes, we actually do see Rick return in some fashion? Again, probably a glimpse of what Rick is up to these days in the universe. Something like that. Who knows? The final scene could even be something completely different. It might even be a teaser for the Rick and Michonne show. It could be a scene that's not really part of the Michonne and Rick show, but it could be used as a teaser for the show. So it's a scene that's in the main show, but it's teasing the Rick and Michonne show. You know what I mean? So that's also another angle to look at it, and another way that they could go with it. So really, 3 big probabilities. One is that it's a scene at the very end where Rick is going to show up and we'll see a glimpse of what he's up to, and that would probably be more likely in a post-credit scene than anything else. The other possibility is that it'll be a variation of the comic book with Judith replacing Carl, telling the story of Rick Grimes, and Rick will return in some fashion at the end of that story that Judith is telling. And this would kind of fit another thing that was teased by Scott Gimple, which is that we're going to see a variation or a remix of the end of the comics and the end of the TV show. So this might be that variation that he was talking about, or that remix. And the third way that it could go is that the final scene is really just the teaser for the Rick and Michonne show, and it has not a lot to do with the storyline for the series itself. But that's pretty much everything I wanted to go through in this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, smash the like button, subscribe to join our community, and press the bell to be notified when I upload on the channel. That's it for this video. See you next time for another super video.